The smell of chalk dust and teenage rebellion filled the air as Alicia Carter wrote another equation on the board. 7 months into her first teaching job, and she still caught herself standing at parade rest when explaining concepts to her students. Old habits died hard, especially ones drilled into you by drill sergeants. "Miss Carter." "I don't get it," called out a voice from the back row. Alicia turned, her eyes finding Trey, a bright kid who struggled with confidence more than concepts. "That's okay. Let's break it down together." She walked between the rows of desks, the familiar weight of her lanyard ID badge swinging gently against her blouse. The students had no idea that just 3 years ago, that same neck had carried dog tags instead. At 32, Alicia Carter didn't look like someone who had served 8 years in the Marine Corps. Her frame was athletic but not imposing. Her hair, once maintained in a tight military bun, now framed her face in soft curls that bounced when she laughed, something she did more freely these days. The only visible hint of her service was her posture, ramrod straight even when sitting, and perhaps the way her eyes constantly scanned the room. A habit from years of maintaining situational awareness in much more dangerous environments than Westridge High School. After finishing with Trey, Alicia glanced at the clock. "Okay, everyone, 5 minutes to pack up. Don't forget your test prep packets for tomorrow." The usual shuffle of papers and zipping backpacks followed. Alicia noticed 2 students lingering by her desk, Zoe and Deshawn, both members of the student council. "Ms. Carter, we were wondering," Zoe started, twisting the end of her braided hair nervously. "If you'd be willing to chaperone the spring dance," Deshawn finished. "Mr. Phillips was supposed to, but he got sick. And Principal Chen said we should ask you because you're, like, super responsible." Alicia smiled. "When is it again?" "This Friday," they answered in unison, hopeful expressions on their faces. Alicia mentally flipped through her calendar. Friday had been earmarked for laundry and catching up on The Real Housewives, a guilty pleasure she'd discovered after leaving the service. But the earnest looks on their faces won out. "Sure thing. Just email me the details." Their faces lit up.
"Thank you."
"You're the best," Zoe exclaimed before they hurried off to their next class. Alone in her classroom, Alicia sank into her chair and pulled out her lunch, the same turkey sandwich and apple she packed every day. Military precision applied to civilian life. As she ate, she opened her laptop to check emails. One from Principal Chen caught her attention. "New transfer student arriving tomorrow. Behavioral concerns. Assigned to your 5th period." Alicia sighed. She had developed a reputation as the teacher who could handle the difficult cases. It wasn't something she had asked for, but somehow, word had gotten around that Ms. Carter's classroom was where disruptive students straightened up. Her phone buzzed with a text from her sister. "Dinner tonight?" "Mom's asking about that guy from the gym again." Alicia smiled and typed back. "Can't. Parent conferences till 7. Tell Mom to stop matchmaking." Her sister replied with a laughing emoji, and she says good teachers need love too. Alicia shook her head and put her phone away. Her family had been supportive but confused when she'd left the Marines to become a teacher. They'd been even more confused when she'd chosen to teach in this district. Not the easiest placement, but one where she felt she could make a real difference. The afternoon sun slanted through the blinds, creating stripes across her classroom floor. The quiet moment reminded her of evenings on base, that transitional time between duty and rest. Teaching wasn't so different from her military service in some ways. Both required discipline, quick thinking, and an unwavering commitment to the mission. She finished her lunch and reached for the small photo frame on her desk, the only personal item she displayed. It showed her unit in Afghanistan, arms around each other's shoulders, dusty and tired but smiling. Staff Sergeant Alicia Carter stood in the center, her face younger but her eyes the same, determined, focused, kind. That evening, after the last parent had left and the school hallways had grown quiet, Alicia sat at her desk grading papers. The janitor, Mr. Washington, knocked on her open door. "You're here late again, Ms. Carter," he said, leaning on his broom. "Just wrapping up," she replied, stretching her arms above her head. "How's your grandson doing in his new school?" Mr. Washington's face brightened. "Much better. That tutor you recommended made all the difference. His reading's improving every week." "That's great to hear," Alicia said, genuinely pleased. "You know, you remind me of my drill instructor back in '85, Mr. Washington said with a chuckle. "He was tough but fair too," Alicia laughed. I'll take that as a compliment. Meant as one, he assured her. Army taught me discipline, but it was the good leaders who taught me purpose. Seems like you're doing the same for these kids. After saying goodnight to Mr. Washington, Alicia packed up her work. The school parking lot was almost empty when she reached her car, a practical sedan that had replaced her beloved motorcycle, after a close call on a rainy highway 2 years ago. Her apartment was 15 minutes away, a small but comfortable space in a quiet complex. She'd moved in after completing her teaching certification, decorating sparingly but thoughtfully. A bookshelf filled with history books and sci-fi novels dominated one wall. A small collection of plants, her attempt at nurturing living things that didn't talk back, lined her kitchen windowsill. That night, as she prepared for bed, Alicia reviewed her lesson plans for the next day, adding notes about the new transfer student. Experience had taught her that preparation was key, especially when facing unknowns. Her phone rang, a FaceTime call from Tamika, her best friend from the Corps who was now stationed in Germany. "Hey, stranger," Tamika greeted, her face filling the screen. "How's civilian life treating you?" "Can't complain," Alicia replied, settling onto her couch. "How's Deutschland?" "Cold, beautiful, the usual," Tamika said with a shrug. "Got promoted last month. Staff Sergeant Harris. Congrats." Alicia beamed with genuine pride. "Yeah, well, someone had to pick up your slack after you abandoned us for those teenage monsters," Tamika teased. "Speaking of monsters, I'm getting a new one tomorrow. Transfer with behavioral concerns, according to Chen." Tamika snorted. "Please. After handling that mess in Kandahar, you can handle anything with a backpack and an attitude." They talked for another half hour, reminiscing about shared experiences and updating each other on mutual friends. Tamika was one of the few people who understood Alicia's decision to leave the military for teaching. "You were always the one teaching the new recruits anyway," she had said when Alicia announced her plans. "Might as well get paid for it." After ending the call, Alicia went through her nightly routine. A quick set of push-ups and sit-ups, old habits, a hot shower, and a cup of chamomile tea. As she sipped her tea, she reviewed the next day's weather forecast and laid out her clothes, a professional but comfortable outfit that would allow her to move freely if needed. Some of her colleagues joked about her preparedness, calling her Ready for Anything Carter. They didn't know how accurate that nickname was, or how many times her readiness had saved lives in her previous career. Before turning out the light, Alicia checked her personal email one last time. There was a message from Dr. Powell, her former therapist, checking in. The transition from military to civilian life hadn't been seamless, and Dr. Powell had helped her navigate the adjustment period, the occasional nightmares, and the challenge of finding new purpose. "Doing well," she wrote back. "Teaching keeps me grounded. No nightmares this month. The classroom management techniques we discussed are working with my more challenging students." As she set her alarm, Alicia reflected on the path that had led her from the battlefields of Afghanistan to room 237 at Westridge High. It wasn't the future she had imagined when she'd enlisted at 18, a directionless kid looking for structure and purpose, but it was a good one. Tomorrow would bring a new challenge in the form of a troubled student. But Alicia Carter had faced down insurgents and survived IED explosions. She had led missions in hostile territory and brought her entire unit home safely. Whatever difficulties this new student presented, she would face them with the same calm determination that had earned her a Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal. As sleep claimed her, Alicia's last thought was of her classroom, not as a battlefield but as another kind of mission field, a place where the stakes were just as high, but the victories measured not in territory gained but in young minds opened, young lives redirected, and potential unleashed. She'd teach them algebra, yes. But more importantly, she'd teach them that they were capable of more than they believed, just as her first sergeant had once taught her. And if that new student tried to test her limits tomorrow, well, they'd learn what her unit had learned years ago. Alicia Carter might speak softly, but she had the strength, training, and resolve of a Marine. She just hoped she wouldn't have to prove it. The morning bell rang as Alicia Carter wrote the day's objectives on the whiteboard. Her 5th period class would arrive in 3 hours, bringing with it the new transfer student mentioned in Principal Chen's email. She'd spent extra time that morning reviewing his file. Andre Thomas, 16, on his 3rd school in 18 months. The records painted a picture of a troubled teen with a talent for finding teachers' weak spots. "Morning, Mizusi," called Trey, as he entered her first period class. A chorus of similar greetings followed as students filed in, some still yawning, others energetically discussing weekend plans. The morning periods flew by in a rhythm Alicia had come to appreciate. Teaching had its own flow, not unlike military operations: preparation, execution, assessment, adjustment. By lunchtime, she felt centered and ready for whatever the afternoon might bring. "Heard you're getting Andre Thomas," said Lisa Patel, sliding her lunch tray next to Alicia's in the teacher's lounge. Lisa taught English down the hall and had become a friend over shared playground duty and faculty meetings. "You know him?" Alicia asked, biting into her apple. Lisa nodded, lowering her voice. "Had him at the beginning of the year before he got transferred to Eastside. Smart kid, but trouble with a capital T. Challenged me in front of the whole class. Tried to turn the other students against me." She stirred her soup thoughtfully. "The worst part is he's clever about it. Never quite crosses the line enough to get more than detention." "What about home life?" Alicia asked. In her experience, behavior rarely existed in a vacuum. Single mom working 2 jobs. Dad's not in the picture. 2 younger siblings. Lisa sighed. The usual story. Not enough support, too much responsibility too young. Alicia nodded. It was a familiar scenario in their district. "Thanks for the heads up." "Just watch your back," Lisa warned. "And document everything." As 5th period approached, Alicia found herself adjusting her classroom with tactical precision. She rearranged a few desks, positioning the new student's seat where she could easily monitor him while maintaining sight lines to the rest of the class. She checked her supplies, ensuring everything had its place, old habits from the core that served her well in classroom management. The bell rang, and students streamed in, their energy heightened by the mid-afternoon slump and the promise of the school day's end in just over an hour. Alicia stood by the door, greeting each student by name, a practice that had initially felt forced but now came naturally. He arrived last, just as the final bell rang. Andre Thomas stood several inches taller than Alicia, with broad shoulders and a watchful gaze that swept the room, assessing. Their eyes met briefly, and Alicia recognized something in his. A wariness, a calculation, a silent challenge. "You must be Andre." "I'm Ms. Carter," she said, extending her hand. "Your seat is 3rd row, 2nd from the left." He looked at her outstretched hand but didn't take it. Instead, he shrugged and moved past her into the classroom. Alicia noted the interaction without reacting, closing the door and moving to the front of the class. "Today we're continuing with quadratic equations," she announced, turning to the board. "Open your textbooks to page 214. The lesson began smoothly enough. Andre sat quietly, though Alicia noticed he hadn't taken out his textbook or notebook. 20 minutes into the period, as students worked on practice problems, she approached his desk. "Need a textbook?" she asked quietly. Andre looked up, his expression unreadable. "Nah, I'm good." "It's not optional," Alicia replied, her voice firm but calm. "Either share with Luis next to you, or I'll get you one from the shelf." A tense moment passed. Several nearby students glanced up from their work, sensing the standoff. Finally, Andre shrugged again. "Whatever. Get me one then." Alicia retrieved a textbook and placed it on his desk. Page 214. Problems 12 through 20. Let me know if you need help. She moved on to help other students but kept aware of Andre from her peripheral vision, a skill honed during street patrols in Fallujah. He opened the book but didn't write anything down. Instead, he began tapping his pencil rhythmically on the desk, the sound growing progressively louder. After 2 minutes of the disruption, Alicia approached again. "Andre, I need you to stop that and get to work." "Just keeping the beat," he said with a slight smirk. "Helps me think." "Find another way to think that doesn't distract everyone else," she responded, then added more softly. "Show me what you can do with problem 12. Let's start there." His eyes narrowed slightly, perhaps surprised she wasn't escalating the confrontation. "I already did this at my old school." "Then it should be easy to show me," she countered, Another standoff. Another small concession as he grudgingly looked at the problem. X equals 2 or -3, he said without writing anything down. Alicia nodded. He was right, and he'd calculated it quickly in his head. Good. Now I need to see your work for the rest. The remainder of the class passed with similar minor skirmishes, Andre doing just enough to avoid outright defiance while testing boundaries at every opportunity. When the bell rang, Alicia wasn't surprised when he was the first out the door. "That's the new guy?" asked Deshaun as he packed up his books. "Seems like a jerk." "Everyone has off days," Alicia replied neutrally. "See you tomorrow." The pattern continued through the week. Andre arrived late each day, participated minimally, and found new ways to disrupt. A well-timed comment that made others laugh, a accidentally dropped book during a quiet moment, sighs and eye rolls when Alicia gave instructions. By Friday, the tension had spread to the rest of the class. Students were taking sides, some finding Andre's challenges entertaining, others growing annoyed at the interruptions. Alicia documented each incident in her detailed teacher's log, a habit that had already saved her from one parent complaint earlier in the year. After class on Friday, she requested a meeting with Andre's guidance counselor, Hector Ramirez. "His test scores are off the charts," Hector confirmed, reviewing Andre's file in his office after school. "Especially in math and science, but his effort grades are rock bottom." "He's testing me," Alicia said, "pushing to see how far he can go." Hector nodded sympathetically. His previous teachers reported the same. Eventually, he escalated until they lost their cool, then used that against them. He closed the file. "The question is, what's your game plan?" Alicia considered. In the Marines, she'd learned that confrontations often revealed more about yourself than your opponent. How you responded under pressure showed your true character. "I'm not playing his game," she said finally. "He wants a reaction, he won't get one, but I won't lower my standards either." The following Monday, Andre arrived with a new strategy. He came on time, took out his materials, and raised his hand to answer a question correctly. Alicia acknowledged him with a nod and continued teaching, not overreacting to his apparent cooperation. The shift came halfway through class when she handed back Friday's quizzes. "Andre, I need to see you after class," she said quietly as she placed his paper face down on his desk. He flipped it over to see a large red F circled at the top. "This is bull," he said, his voice rising. "I knew these answers." "You didn't show your work as required," Alicia explained calmly, "as I mentioned 3 times during the quiz." "This is just because you don't like me," he shot back. The class went silent, all eyes on the unfolding drama. "It's because you didn't follow directions," Alicia corrected, keeping her voice steady. "You can retake it after school if you'd like." "Why would I waste my time?" Andre crumpled the paper and tossed it on the floor. "This whole class is stupid anyway." Alicia looked at him for a moment, then bent down and picked up the crumpled quiz, smoothing it out and placing it back on his desk. "The offer stands. Your choice." She continued distributing papers, aware of the ripple of whispers traveling through the classroom. When she turned back to the board, a wadded paper ball flew past her head, missing by inches and bouncing off the whiteboard. Without turning, she said, "Andre, I'll see you in detention." "You can't prove that was me," he challenged. Now she turned, meeting his gaze directly. "I don't need to. I know it was you. Detention 3:30. The bell rang minutes later. As students filed out, some shot sympathetic glances at Alicia, others looked nervously at Andre, who remained seated, glaring at her. When they were alone, he stood slowly, gathering his things. "I'm not coming to your stupid detention." "That's your choice," Alicia replied, "but there will be consequences." "Whatever. You think you're so tough," he sneered, moving toward the door. "But I've dealt with teachers like you before. By next week, you'll be begging Principal Chen to transfer me out." Alicia watched him leave, recognizing the challenge for what it was. In Afghanistan, she'd learned to read the signs before an ambush. The unusual quiet, the subtle shifts in routine, the heightened tension in the air. Those same instincts told her now that Andre was building to something bigger. That evening, as she documented the day's events, Alicia received an email from Principal Chen. Andre's mother couldn't make the parent-teacher conference they'd scheduled for the following day. Third cancellation this month. Alicia sighed and closed her laptop. Tomorrow was the pre-exam review. Crucial material the students needed before Friday's test. She'd have to find a way to maintain order while still reaching Andre. As she packed up to leave, Mr. Washington appeared at her door. "Heard you had some trouble today," he said. "Nothing I can't handle," Alicia assured him. "I know that," he replied with a knowing smile. "Just wondering if that young man knows what he's getting himself into." Alicia smiled back, appreciating the vote of confidence. "He'll find out soon enough." The next morning dawned gray and rainy, matching Alicia's mood as she drove to school. She'd slept poorly, her mind replaying yesterday's confrontation with Andre, searching for approaches she hadn't tried yet. 8 years in the Marines had taught her that sometimes tension had to peak before resolution could be found. The question was whether that peak would come in a controlled way or an explosive one. She arrived earlier than usual, using the quiet time to prepare her classroom meticulously for the pre-exam review. Today's material was crucial, concepts that would make up 30% of Friday's test. She wrote key formulas on one side of the board, leaving space for examples and practice problems. "You're here early," Principal Chen said, appearing in the doorway with 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to Alicia. "Rough day yesterday?" "Nothing I can't handle," she replied, accepting the coffee gratefully. Chen nodded, leaning against a desk. "I know. That's why I placed Andre in your class. If anyone can reach him, it's you." "I'm trying," Alicia said, "but I can't help feeling there's something we're missing. His acting out seems purposeful, almost like he's following a script." "His previous schools reported similar patterns," Chen acknowledged. "He pushes until someone pushes back, then uses that reaction to play the victim." He straightened up. "Just be careful. Document everything." "Always do, sir," Alicia replied with a half smile. The "sir" slipped out occasionally, another holdover from her service days. Chen smiled at the formality. "Let me know if you need backup. I can be here during 5th period if you think it would help." Alicia considered the offer. Having the principal present might prevent an incident, but it would also signal to Andre that she couldn't handle him on her own. "I appreciate it, but I think that might escalate things. Let me try one more approach first." The morning classes passed in their usual rhythm. Between periods, Alicia checked her phone and found a text from Tamika. "How's it going with the problem kid? Need me to send in the Marines?" Alicia smiled, typing back, "Not yet. We'll update after today's battle." By the time 5th period approached, Alicia had formulated her strategy. She would offer Andre a choice: participate constructively or complete the review worksheet in the hallway. No audience, no power struggle, just a straightforward choice with clear consequences. The students filed in as the bell rang. Andre was neither first nor last today, entering with a neutral expression that somehow put Alicia more on edge than his usual scowl. Something felt different. She noted that he sat straighter, seemed more alert. In the core, she'd developed an instinct for when something was about to happen. That same instinct now sent a subtle warning up her spine. "Good afternoon, everyone," she began, moving to the center of the room. "Today's review is critical for Friday's exam. We'll go through each major concept, work through example problems together, and then you'll have time to practice and ask questions." She distributed the review packets, noting that Andre actually took his without comment and placed it on his desk. Too compliant, her instincts warned. Too calm before the storm. "Let's start with quadratic functions," she said, turning to the board. "Who can tell me the standard form?" A few hands went up. Alicia called on Luis, who answered correctly. "Good. Now let's look at how we graph these functions. The key points we need to identify are..." 20 minutes into the review, Alicia had covered the first 3 concepts without interruption from Andre. He hadn't participated, but he hadn't disrupted either. He sat with his pencil in hand, occasionally making notes on his packet. The unusual compliance made her increasingly uneasy as she moved to the 4th concept, the one students typically struggled with most. Alicia noticed. Andre put down his pencil and sat back in his chair. "For rational functions, we need to identify any asymptotes," she explained, drawing an example on the board. Who can tell me what values of X would make this function undefined? Silence fell across the classroom. This was always a challenging concept. Let's think through it step by step, Alicia encouraged. The denominator can't equal 0, so… This is such a waste of time. Andre's voice cut through the silence, loud enough to startle several students. Nobody's going to use this garbage in real life. Alicia turned calmly. Actually, these concepts are foundational for engineering, computer science, and dozens of other fields. But more importantly, they teach problem-solving skills that apply everywhere. Yeah, right, Andre scoffed. You just like feeling smart, making the rest of us jump through hoops. The tension in the room ratcheted up instantly. Students glanced between Andre and Alicia, waiting for her response. Andre, you have a choice, Alicia said, her voice level. Participate constructively, or take your packet to complete in the hall. What would you prefer? His eyes narrowed. I'm not going anywhere. Then I need you to work quietly while I help your classmates prepare for their test. Alicia turned back to the board, refusing to escalate the confrontation. Of course you're ignoring me, Andre said, his voice rising. Just like all the other teachers. Just like everyone else. Alicia turned back slowly. I'm not ignoring you. I'm giving you space to make a better choice. Don't talk to me like I'm stupid. Andre pushed his chair back with a screech. The class froze. Alicia recognized the moment for what it was, a tipping point. Her body shifted automatically into a balanced stance. Weight evenly distributed, hands relaxed at her sides. Not overtly defensive, but ready. No one thinks you're stupid, Andre, she said quietly. In fact, your test scores show you're one of the brightest students in this class. Which makes me wonder why you're working so hard to fail. Something flickered across his face, surprise. Perhaps that she knew about his test scores, or that she'd acknowledged his intelligence publicly. You don't know anything about me, he said, but his voice had lost some of its edge. You're right, Alicia agreed. I don't know why you've been to 3 schools in 18 months. I don't know why you refuse to show what you're capable of. I don't know why you are so angry. But I'd like to understand if you'd let me. For a moment, the classroom was completely still. Andre stood by his desk, his expression unreadable. Then his face hardened again. You think you can psych me out? Play nice and fix all my problems? He laughed harshly. I've heard it all before. None of you actually care. Andre, I need you to sit down or step into the hall, Alicia said, her voice firmer now. Or what? He took a step toward her. You'll send me to the principal? Call my mom who never shows up. I've been through this at every school. You're all the same. Alicia held her ground, conscious of 27 other students watching. This isn't about punishment. It's about respect for me, for your classmates, and for yourself. Respect? Andre's voice rose as he took another step forward, now just a few feet from her. No one respects me, so why should I respect any of you? Everyone. Please continue reviewing problems 6 through 10 while Andre and I step outside to talk, Alicia said to the class. Her eyes never leaving Andre. I'm not going anywhere with you, he said. Taking another step closer, Alicia could see the pulse jumping in his neck, the tightness in his jaw. Warning signs she recognized from confrontations in far more dangerous places than a high school classroom. Then I'll need to call security, she said calmly, reaching for the classroom phone on her desk. It happened in an instant. Andre lunged forward, knocking the phone from her hand. Before anyone could react, his hands were around her throat, fingers digging in on either side of her windpipe. You're not calling anyone, he shouted, his face inches from hers. Gasps and screams erupted from the students. A chair crashed to the floor as someone jumped up. But Alicia remained perfectly still, her eyes locked on Andre's. Time seemed to slow, just as it had during firefights and ambushes. Alicia felt a strange calmness sweep through her body. Her Marine training kicked in automatically, assessing. His grip was tight but unpracticed. He was using his thumbs incorrectly if he actually wanted to cut off her air. His stance was unbalanced, weight too far forward. His eyes showed not calculated violence but blind panic. The look of someone who'd gone further than he'd intended and didn't know how to back down. Most telling of all, his hands were trembling, for 1 heartbeat, 2, 3. Alicia remained motionless, her eyes never wavering from his. She saw confusion flicker across his face. He'd expected fear, screaming, struggle, anything but this composed assessment. Andre, she said quietly. Her voice steady despite the pressure on her throat. You need to let go now. The classroom had gone completely silent. 27 students sat frozen, watching as Andre's hands remained locked around Ms. Carter's throat. His eyes had widened, showing the first flickers of uncertainty at her calm reaction. "Andre," Alicia repeated, her voice somehow still steady. "You need to let go now. This isn't what you want." His fingers tightened briefly, then trembled. "You don't know what I want," he said, but the rage in his voice had already begun to crack, revealing something more vulnerable underneath. Alicia remained perfectly still, her eyes never leaving his. 8 years in the Marines had taught her that the most dangerous moment in any confrontation was often not the initial attack, but the resolution, when pride, fear, and adrenaline created a volatile mix. "I know you don't want to throw away your future," she said quietly, "which is what will happen if you don't release me in the next 3 seconds. A girl in the front row whimpered. Someone else was frantically texting, probably calling for help. But Alicia kept her focus entirely on Andre, whose breathing had become shallow and rapid. 3, she began counting. 2, before she reached 1, Andre's grip loosened. But he didn't step back, seemed unable to, as if paralyzed by the magnitude of what he'd done. In that suspended moment, Alicia made her move. With precise movements drawn from years of combat training, she executed a defensive maneuver that was both effective and controlled. Her right hand came up between his arms, breaking his weakened grip with a quick outward motion. Simultaneously, she pivoted slightly, creating distance while maintaining her balance. The entire sequence took less than 2 seconds and used minimal force, just enough to separate them without further escalation. She hadn't struck him, hadn't thrown him to the ground, hadn't caused any pain. She'd simply ended the threat with surgical precision. "Luis," she said without taking her eyes off Andre, "go to the office and ask Principal Chen to come here immediately." Her voice remained composed, but carried an authority that brooked no argument. Luis bolted from his seat and out the door. Andre stood rooted to the spot, his hands now hanging at his sides. His face registered shock, not from her defensive move, which had been almost gentle, but from the aftermath of his own actions. The classroom remained eerily silent. "Everyone else, please gather your belongings and wait in the hallway," Alicia directed. "Take your review packets and continue working on problems 6 through 10. There was a rustle of movement as students began slowly collecting their things, many casting wary glances at Andre, who still hadn't moved. "Now please," Alicia added, her tone firm but not harsh. The students filed out quietly. Deshawn paused at the door. "Ms. Carter, are you okay? Do you need us to—" "I'm fine, Deshawn. Thank you." She gave him a reassuring nod. "Please close the door." When the last student had left, Alicia took a deliberate step back and gestured to a desk in the front row. "Sit down, Andre." He blinked as if coming out of a trance. I wasn't going to—" His words trailed off as he slumped into the indicated chair. His bravado completely evaporated. Alicia pulled her own chair from behind her desk and sat facing him, just out of arm's reach, close enough to talk, far enough for safety. The tactical positioning was instinctive after years of handling potentially volatile situations. "What happened just now?" she asked, her voice level. Andre stared at the floor. "I don't know. I just snapped." "People don't just snap," Alicia said. "There's always something behind it." She rubbed her neck lightly where his fingers had pressed. "There would be bruises tomorrow. This isn't your first physical confrontation with a teacher, is it?" Andre's head jerked up, surprise flashing across his face. "How did you—" "Your file doesn't mention it," she said, "but I recognize the pattern." She leaned forward slightly. "What I don't understand is why you want to get expelled." The question hung in the air between them. Andre's eyes narrowed, then widened in surprise. "I don't—" he began, then stopped himself. His shoulders slumped further. "You wouldn't understand. Try me." Before he could answer, the classroom door burst open. Principal Chen rushed in, followed by Mr. Rivera, the school security officer. Both men stopped short at the unexpectedly calm tableau before them. "Miss Carter," Chen exclaimed. "Are you all right?" Luis said there was an attack. "I'm fine," Alicia assured him, standing up. "Andre and I had a serious misunderstanding that escalated inappropriately." She glanced at the student who was now staring at his hands. "We were just discussing the consequences." Chen's eyes darted between them, noting the redness on Alicia's neck. Luis said he had his hands around your throat. Andre flinched visibly at the words. That's correct, Alicia confirmed calmly. And now we're addressing it. Chen's expression hardened. This goes well beyond a classroom management issue, Ms. Carter. Andre, collect your things. You're coming with me to my office while we call your mother and the police. The police? Andre looked up, panic washing across his face. Assault on a teacher is a criminal offense, Chen stated flatly. Alicia stepped forward. Principal Chen, could I speak with you privately for a moment? Chen hesitated, then nodded. Mr. Rivera, please stay with Andre. He followed Alicia into the hallway, where students quickly pretended they hadn't been trying to overhear. Continue your review in room 110, Alicia instructed her class. Ms. Patel is expecting you. When the students had moved down the hall, she turned to Chen. I'm not saying there shouldn't be serious consequences, but I'd like to request we hold off on police involvement until I've had a chance to speak with his mother. Chen's eyebrows shot up. He assaulted you, Alicia? I saw the marks on your neck. I know, she acknowledged, and I'm not excusing that behavior. But I've been working with troubled youth long enough to recognize when someone's trying to self-destruct. There's something else going on with Andre. Chen studied her for a long moment. This isn't your first rodeo, is it? With situations like this, I mean. A ghost of a smile crossed Alicia's face. Let's just say I've dealt with more volatile individuals than a 16-year-old with anger issues. Finally, Chen nodded. All right. He'll be suspended pending an expulsion hearing, as per district policy, but we'll hold off on police involvement for now, provided you're willing to sit down with him and his mother when she can come in. Thank you, Alicia said, the tension in her shoulders easing slightly. Back in the classroom, Andre sat exactly where they'd left him, Mr. Rivera standing watchfully nearby. When Chen and Alicia re-entered, Andre spoke without looking up. I'm sorry, he said, his voice barely audible. I didn't mean to. You just wanted what, Andre? Alicia prompted gently. He shook his head, unable or unwilling to continue. Chen stepped forward. Let's continue this discussion in my office. Ms. Carter, you should have the nurse check you out. I'm fine, she insisted. But I would like to be part of the conversation with Andre. Chen gave her an appraising look, then nodded. If you're sure. As they walked through the empty hallways toward the administrative offices, Alicia noticed Andre's slumped posture and downcast eyes. The contrast with his earlier defiance was striking. In the Marines, she'd learned to recognize the moment when an aggressor became truly aware of the consequences of their actions. Andre had reached that point. In Chen's office, they sat in uncomfortable silence, waiting for Andre's mother to answer her phone. On the third attempt, she finally picked up. Chen explained the situation in carefully measured terms, emphasizing the seriousness while avoiding unnecessarily inflammatory language. After several minutes, he hung up. She'll be here in 30 minutes, he informed them. She's leaving work early. Andre's head snapped up. She can't leave early. She'll lose her job. For the first time, real fear, not anger, not defiance, showed on his face. This is serious enough to warrant her presence, Chen said firmly. Andre's breathing quickened. You don't understand. She's already on her final warning. If she leaves again, his voice cracked. We can't pay rent as it is. Alicia and Chen exchanged looks. This was the first piece of the puzzle clicking into place. Is that why you've been trying to get expelled? Alicia asked quietly. To get sent to a school closer to home? To make it easier for your mother? Andre's silence was answer enough. There are other ways to handle school transfers, Chen said, his tone softening slightly. Ways that don't involve assault or expulsion. We tried that, Andre muttered. Twice. The district said no because our address changed by just 1 block. Mom couldn't afford the apartment in the right zone anymore. The full picture was becoming clearer to Alicia. A family in financial crisis. A mother working multiple jobs. A teenage boy taking on too much responsibility, including, perhaps, trying to solve problems in the only ways he could imagine. That doesn't excuse what happened today, she said, touching her neck gently. I know, Andre whispered. I just lost it. I wasn't thinking. Clearly, Chen agreed dryly. Well, we'll discuss options when your mother arrives. Alicia glanced at the clock on the wall. Her next class would be starting soon, with no teacher to cover it if she stayed here. I should check on my students, she said, standing up. I'll be back after my last period ends. As she turned to leave, Andre spoke again. Ms. Carter? There was uncertainty in his voice. How did you? I mean, what you did when I... He struggled to find the words. Where did you learn to do that? Alicia paused at the door. I wasn't always a math teacher, Andre. She offered a small, enigmatic smile. We'll talk more later. The final bell of the day rang as Alicia made her way back to Principal Chen's office. The bruises on her neck had begun to darken, drawing concerned glances from colleagues in the hallway. She'd brushed off their questions with reassurances that everything was under control, a habit from her military days when showing vulnerability wasn't an option. Outside Chen's office, she paused to collect herself. Through the frosted glass, she could make out 3 figures, Chen behind his desk, Andre still slumped in his chair, and a woman who must be his mother. Alicia took a deep breath and knocked. Come in, Chen called. The woman who turned to face Alicia was younger than she'd expected, probably early 30s, with the same high cheekbones and watchful eyes as her son. She wore a fast food uniform, the name tag reading Tanya. Dark circles under her eyes spoke of chronic exhaustion. Ms. Thomas, this is Ms. Carter, Chen introduced them. Tanya Thomas stood immediately, her expression a complex mix of anger, shame, and fear. I am so sorry for what my son did, she said, her voice tight with emotion. It's inexcusable. Please sit down, Alicia said gently. I think we all need to talk. As Alicia took a seat, she noticed Andre wouldn't meet his mother's eyes. The defiance that had dominated his demeanor all week was completely gone, replaced by something that looked a lot like defeat. I've explained the situation to Ms. Thomas, Chen began, including the fact that an assault of this nature typically results in expulsion and criminal charges. Tanya's hands tightened in her lap. I understand. Andre will face the consequences of his actions. She turned to her son. I raised you better than this. Andre seemed to shrink further into his chair. Before any final decisions are made, Alicia interjected, I'd like to understand more about what's been happening with Andre. She looked directly at the boy. You mentioned earlier about moving and trying to transfer schools. Tanya sighed heavily. We lost our apartment last year when the rent went up. The new place is much further from Andre's original school. He has to take 2 buses, which means leaving at 5:30 in the morning. And you tried to get a transfer to a closer school? Alicia prompted. Twice, Tanya confirmed. The district said we didn't qualify since technically we're still in the same school zone, just on the far edge. But with my work schedule, she trailed off, then straightened her shoulders. But that's no excuse for putting his hands on a teacher. No, it isn't, Alicia agreed, touching her neck lightly. But context matters. Chen cleared his throat. Ms. Carter has requested that we hold off on involving the police for now. That's her prerogative as the victim in this incident. However, the suspension is non-negotiable, and there will need to be a disciplinary hearing to determine whether expulsion is appropriate. I understand, Tanya said quietly. Andre finally spoke up. If I get expelled, where would I go to school? There's the alternative program at Riverside, Chen replied. That's even further away, Andre muttered. Alicia watched the interaction carefully. In the Marines, she'd learned that solving a problem required understanding its root causes. Andre's behavior was inexcusable, but it wasn't incomprehensible. Ms. Thomas, she said, I'd like to propose something different. If Principal Chen agrees, she turned to Chen. What if, instead of immediate expulsion, we looked at this as an opportunity for intervention? Chen raised an eyebrow. What did you have in mind? Mandatory counseling for starters. Regular check-ins with both a guidance counselor and with me. Community service, specifically helping to develop and deliver a program on conflict resolution for younger students. She paused. And assistance with the transportation issue. I appreciate what you're trying to do, Ms. Carter, Tanya began, but I can't afford private counseling, and our insurance is basic at best. The school has resources, Chen said thoughtfully. We could arrange counseling through our district program. He studied Alicia. You're suggesting restorative justice rather than purely punitive measures. Alicia nodded. Exactly. Punishment alone won't address the underlying issues. And honestly, sending Andre to the alternative school seems likely to make things worse, not better. It would still need to go before the disciplinary committee, Chen cautioned, and there would need to be clear benchmarks and consequences. I understand, Alicia said, but I'm willing to advocate for this approach. Andre looked up, confusion written across his face. Why would you do that? After what I did? Alicia met his gaze steadily. Because I've seen enough wasted potential in my lifetime. I'm not ready to write you off based on your worst moment. The room fell silent. Andre's eyes welled with tears that he quickly blinked away. I'd need your commitment, Andre, Alicia continued. Real commitment to doing the work and making changes. No more testing boundaries, no more acting out. If you're struggling, you talk about it instead of exploding. Yes, ma'am, he said quietly. I promise. Tanya reached over and squeezed her son's hand. We both promise. Whatever it takes. The meeting continued for another hour, hammering out details and expectations. By the end, a preliminary plan had been established, pending approval from the disciplinary committee. Andre would serve a 2-week suspension, followed by a probationary return with strict behavioral requirements, counseling, and community service. Chen had even made a call to the transportation department about possible solutions for Andre's commute. As they prepared to leave, Tanya hung back while Andre gathered his things. May I speak with you privately, Ms. Carter? She asked. Alicia nodded and they stepped into the hallway. I have to ask, Tanya said, her voice low. The way you handled Andre when he put his hands on you. That wasn't just teacher training, was it? A small smile touched Alicia's lips. No, it wasn't. You were military? Tanya guessed. Marines. 8 years, Tanya nodded slowly. Andre's father was Army before he... She left the sentence unfinished. Thank you. Not just for not pressing charges, but for seeing something in my son worth saving. He's a smart kid, Alicia said simply. Too smart to throw his life away over a bad decision. The days following the incident passed in a blur of paperwork, meetings, and quiet conversations with her students about what had happened. The school counselor had come to speak to the class. The bruises on Alicia's neck had faded from purple to yellow to a memory. 3 weeks later, Andre returned to school. His first day back, he arrived at Alicia's classroom door during lunch, standing awkwardly with his hands in his pockets. Ms. Carter, can I talk to you? She gestured him in. How are things going with Dr. Powell? She asked, referring to the counselor Andre had been seeing. Good, actually. He sat in the desk across from her. She's helping me understand some stuff about my anger and about my dad. Alicia nodded, letting him continue at his own pace. I wanted to thank you, he said finally, for giving me another chance. My other schools just passed me along when I caused problems. Sometimes the harder path is the right one, she replied. For both of us. He nodded, understanding the reference to her decision not to press charges. I've been working on that presentation for the middle schoolers. About conflict resolution. I'd like to see it when you're ready, she offered. The door opened and Luis and Deshawn appeared, pausing when they saw Andre. It's okay, Alicia assured them. Andre was just telling me about his community service project. An awkward silence followed, broken when Deshawn stepped forward. We're putting together a study group for the makeup test. You should join, man. You're good at math when you actually try. Andre looked surprised, then nodded. Yeah, okay, thanks. The conversation that followed was stilted but civil, the first tentative steps toward reintegration. In the months that followed, Alicia's classroom became a model that other teachers visited to observe. Not because it was perfect, there were still difficult days, still moments of tension, but because of the culture of respect that had developed there. Andre's story, while never explicitly shared, had rippled through the school community, transforming not just one student but an entire approach to discipline. At Principal Chen's request, Alicia began leading professional development sessions on classroom management and de-escalation techniques. From combat to classroom, crisis response strategies became a district-wide training program, with Alicia demonstrating the same defensive maneuvers she'd used with Andre. The goal is never to engage physically, she would tell her colleagues. But if it happens, you need to be prepared to protect yourself and your students with minimal force. On a warm spring afternoon, as students filed out after the final bell, Tanya Thomas appeared in Alicia's doorway. Just dropping by to say thank you, she said, stepping into the classroom. Andre got his report card today. All A's and B's, Alicia noted with a smile. He's been working hard. It's more than the grades, Tanya said. He's different at home, too. More helpful with his siblings, more present. She paused. And he's been accepted into that summer engineering program at the community college. I heard, Alicia replied. He earned it. After Tanya left, Alicia sat at her desk, looking around her empty classroom. The space had witnessed so much over the year. Conflict and resolution, struggles and growth. Moments of both failure and triumph. 8 years in the Marines had taught her about courage under fire, about making split-second decisions with lives at stake. But it was here in room 237 at Westridge High that she'd learned different but equally valuable lessons about second chances, about seeing beyond behavior to underlying needs, about the kind of strength that didn't involve physical force. That evening, as she packed up her materials, Mr. Washington appeared with his mop and bucket. "Another day in the trenches, Miss Carter?" he asked with a knowing smile. "Something like that," she agreed. "But good trenches. The best kind of battlefield," the old veteran nodded, "is the one where everybody wins.